Secondary camera used this morning, but I think it'll do more than the trick for what we need on this Friday. It is the 9th day of October. I'm Dan Gresham. I have shifted locations. You may have seen me earlier this morning here on the KFDM Facebook page, coming to you live from the KFDM newsroom, kind of a behind the scenes thing with what was going on this morning in the Weather Center. But we have shifted. I made the run home. I'm not going to be positive about this, but I think I may have already gotten as much rain this morning as I got during the entire time with Hurricane Laura. I don't have a gauge, so I'm just kind of guessing at that. But I'm pretty sure that's the situation when I look outside. And there's more coming. If you're just getting up this morning, there's certainly some more coming. But the good news is if you live in Southeast Texas, this track looks like it's going to take it off to the east of us again. So twice we have managed to dodge a hurricane during this season. Now, for our friends over in Lake Charles, Sulphur, DeRidder, Kinder, the list goes on. My heart goes out to you guys. I know it's been tough. I know it hasn't been easy. I have friends over there who've been struggling that, had to move out of their house. They're living in other places, New Orleans, Baton Rouge, and driving back and forth. And now here comes something else. All those blue tarps. I had some drone video this morning from Lake Charles, and it's amazing, how many blue tarps are up on top of homes. And if you guys get what you may get out of this, which could be 60, 70 mile an hour winds, you got to imagine those tarps are coming off. I can imagine nails are going to be holding plastic down when you've got that kind of wind speed. So let's do this. Let's jump in. We'll get you a look at what's going on. First things first, KFDM.com, first stop on the internet. Great place to go if you want to stay up with what's happening. I talked about this earlier this morning. Our meteorologists do a great job of publishing and pushing information out. As soon as it becomes available to them, they pass it along to you. These are the latest images. I probably shouldn't say latest, because if you really wanted to see the absolute latest, what you would do is go to the weather tab at the top of the page. Then you would go down to interactive radar. And again, you can control this. You're in control of this on your computer. So you can move this thing if you want to. So you can zoom in and you can zoom out. So I'm going to zoom out just to kind of give you a better idea, and I'll point things out to you so that you can kind of see where we are. All right, there's the border. That's the Sabine River running down right through there, the Sabine River. Beaumont is hidden, but Beaumont's like about right there. And Houston over here, and of course, Lake Charles would be right around there. Kind of hard to tell. It's hard to see. Beaumont, I guess, there. Lake Charles right there. But you get the idea. And you can see we're starting to get some of these outer rain bands here that are moving onshore and moving across Beaumont. So what Dana is saying this morning, and what Chad has been saying, and what Greg have been saying, is that we will probably see likely anywhere from 4 to 6 inches of rain. Not a problem. We can handle 4 to 6 inches of rain pretty easily, as a matter of fact, because we've had some very dry conditions up until this point. So I don't think there'll be any problem soaking it up, taking it. Now, if you're in a low-lying area that normally floods, when you get a half an inch of rain, that could be problematic. But that. This is not a surprise. You know what happens when you get any amount of rain. And you could, these bands continue to come on shore like that, you could get some pretty good amounts of rain. The discussion this morning, of course, this is the eye of the storm, and you can see some of the bands right around it. Those would be the most intense part of the storm, right there around the eye wall. And that part of the storm would be super intense. When they talk about, oh, it's a Category 3, winds of 110, that's where you find the 110 mile an hour winds. All right. Then you get further out, it diminishes the further you go, north, south, east, and west, right? So your wind fields are immediately around the eye and the eye wall, that it's most intense. And then as it goes out, it becomes tropical storm, and then it becomes breezy. All right. So, and you got to remember scale. Look at from there, and then let me push it all the way in. Now look at it. And I'm sorry if I could figure out how to get rid of maybe I can't. No, it's full screen. I don't think I can. I don't think it'll let me do that. Let's see. I don't think so, though. I think I'm going to have the advertisement there on the in the way. But anyway, you can see what I'm talking about here as far as being able to manipulate it yourself, so you can kind of get a perspective, as to where you can see it's already really on the one side. You're talking about south of Morgan City, and the other side is south of Houston. That's a pretty good spread there. But not all of that is hurricane force winds, obviously. So you just really pay attention to this, which now, and again, what Greg and Chad and Dana this morning are saying is we should expect a more northeasterly movement as this heads toward landfall, which would put it into eastern Cameron Parish. I think, let me go over here to the KFDM Facebook page, where again, you can see these things. This is the track of the storm, and you can see the cone really is no longer in Texas, which should make a lot of people feel a little bit better this morning. But they call this the cone of uncertainty, and we were talking about this yesterday, if you were with us for the morning update from the house, that this never changes. The distance, how wide this is spread is always the same. What's changed is proximity to land. So as this moves closer, that means they have more confidence in where this is going to make landfall. But this center line is where we all focus on and go, oh, that's where it's coming. But what they're telling you, as I understand it, and talking to our meteorologists and folks from the National Hurricane Center through the years, is consider this pink part the margin of error, okay, or the margin of movement. They're saying, we believe it's going to come ashore right there, but the possibility exists for it to go this much or this much, either way. So that's why you need to keep. So let's consider, and again, I'm not saying this is what's going to happen. I'm just saying that this is an example. Let's say that this storm did not move quite as much to the east. And you got to remember Hurricane Laura didn't move quite as much one direction or the other, as have many storms that some of us have been through. But let's say this is they're feeling like this is the line, but in fact, it winds up being on the edge of this. Well, now all of a sudden you've got a whole different story for folks in Jefferson County and, Orange County, or vice versa. Let's say it winds up being over here, then you have less effect. You don't really have much at all. So that's why we're telling you it's important to still pay attention to what's going on, even though we think for Southeast Texas that it will not be a direct hit. But it's just wise. If you're talking about a Category 3 storm, it's just, even if it becomes a 2, it's just wise. When it's this close in your backyard for landfall, you want to be paying attention to what's going on. Again, I also want to remind you there are a lot of resources for information that you can use, but don't become your own meteorologist. Don't start saying, well, I can do as good as they're doing. I know what's going on. By the way, I wanted to show you, if you hit the arrow at the bottom of the screen, it actually puts everything in motion and creates a movie, if you will, or a slideshow. And to me, I love this because watch what happens on the last couple of frames. You're going to see this now start tracking a little bit more off to the northeast. You see that? And it's going to wobble too. You know this. Any experienced watcher of storms knows when these things are moving, one time it's going to be here, then it'll be over there, then it'll be back. That is not uncommon and or unusual. But it's also not the determining factor as to where the landfall is, which is where, again, why do you ever wonder, why do we focus so much on landfall? Why do you focus so much on exactly where it's going to be, coming on shore? Again, because that is the area of the most intense weather. That's why they always focus on that. So you're going to see them do that all day. They're going to continue to update it. It's pretty obvious if we look at this, we're in for some rain. I mean, there's not much guessing going on there. With Doppler radar, you pretty much know all of these bands. Look at this spreading out. Where's it coming? Right across Cameron, Calcasieu, right across to Beaumont. There's Lake Charles right there. There's Beaumont right there. And it's just spinning and going north, so that's going to spread across. So rain is going to be, it's going to be, if you got to go to Houston today, you're going to be dealing with rain pretty much all the way there. You're going thinking, I've got to head over to Lafayette, or you're going to Baton Rouge for some reason, you're going to be dealing with rain a good majority of the time. Dana told me this morning, if you were going to be out, you were going to be driving, your best idea would be to do it this morning and not in the afternoon. Because again, this is probably still 130 miles out, 120 miles out. So while it looks close, when you look at maps and you look at this radar, it's still, put it in perspective. There's Beaumont, there's Houston, that's 90 miles. And that looks a lot more than 90. So again, guesstimation on my part, more than 100 miles out. Wind speeds, it's all going to depend on how far east this goes. It's hard to say, it's going to be, 40 miles an hour. Depending, you say, well, what about Lumberton? What about, Buna? What about Bon Weir? What about, you can ask all those questions, but until you know exactly where it's going to make landfall, because then you got to realize distance away from the center. I think it's, that's asking a lot of those meteorologists to be able to tell you exactly how much. But I think in general, we're talking about wind speeds, maybe 40 gusts to 50 is what I'm hearing from these guys. And again, you're better to pay attention to what they're saying, because I'm just giving you a general overview of what I've heard them say and observations from what we're seeing this morning. All right. And again, the best thing you can do for yourself is to pay attention. It ain't over till it's over, as we're wont to say. And again, you've got KFDM to watch. You've got Facebook here, on the Facebook page. These guys, look at all the stuff they've laid out for you on the Facebook page, today. Our meteorologists, again, I think they're tireless. I mean, it is just constant. This is 48 minutes ago. They put down the latest track. There's Doppler radar posted. There's the track posted again by Dana. There's Dan doing a newsroom update this morning. But it's all there. The information is available. We're not going to let you, leave you hanging. We never have. We've been doing this for, as a station for more than 60 years, 70 years. We're going to keep you up to date on what's, because it's in our best interest, because you are in our interest to keep you informed. I do want to tell you this, that you can, if you'd like, I'd love to hear from you. It's always fun to see who's watching, who's up this morning watching the live stream. You can comment in the comments section just like you do for any Facebook post. Say good morning, tell me where you're watching from, ask me a question that you might have. This is what I was talking about a while ago. Jennifer Bryant asked, any clue how the winds will be in Orange County this afternoon? Breezy, again, it's just going to be one of those things, Jennifer, you're going to have to watch and see how far the storm is away from you to know what kind of winds you're going to have. And I will also tell you this. I know that Chad and Greg and Dana have been doing live streams as well, talking about it, but they also have all the maps. So they will produce what they called a wind field map that will show you, it's a model that they run on computers that can show you how the different winds stack out from there. But again, don't be surprised if you do see some gusty winds with a hurricane this close, if you see 40, 50 mile an hour winds. Let me ask you this question real quick. Are you a good judge of wind speeds? Do you think that you could walk outside and you could say, that's 10 miles an hour, that's 15 miles an hour? I thought I could. Until the first time I really was in some extreme wind. I think most of us gauge wind higher than it actually is. So you would go out and you would go, oh, the wind's blowing the was it anatometer, the thing that spins around, and they would go, oh, okay. It's 40 miles an hour. Well, I'm sitting there going, oh, that's got to be at least 55, 60 miles an hour, because I'm just not a good judge of it. I'm not exposed to it enough to be able to gauge, how much wind is coming at us. But don't be surprised if you see some, 40, 50, depending on where you are, 60 mile an hour winds. They're not out of question. And again, pretty good rain totals could also be expected. Gary Wise is up this morning. He's watching from Round Rock. Gary, we have people that watch all around the world, literally, because they have an association with Beaumont, or maybe they have family that's still living here, so they're trying to keep up with what's going on. But I always consider it a privilege when people check in. So I'm assuming, Gary, you have some connection to Southeast Texas. If that's the case, we appreciate you checking in, and keep checking in, because we're gonna keep keep you up to date with what's going on this morning as well. I'm looking for questions. All right, Tamara has a long one. She says, maybe not a problem for y'all, but my yard hasn't been dry since Harvey. I'm tired of flooding. Then Orange County still hasn't picked up the stuff people put in their ditches from the last storm. I get tired of hearing we need rain. I, for one, don't need it and or want it. Tamara, I get it, but I think that you're probably in the minority of people who can't handle it. I also understand what you're saying. Debris in it, for us is an issue, but it's also an issue for folks in, say, Lake Charles, which at this point, they stand to see a lot more wind velocity than we do in Beaumont or Port Arthur or Orange. And you can imagine with all the debris they've got laying around from Hurricane Laura, what kind of a problem that can cause when you start moving that stuff with 70-mile-an-hour winds and hurling it, at homes and everything else. So again, take care if you're going to be over there. Angela Conley says, good morning from Nacogdoches. Good morning, Angela. Vicki Carter is watching in Port Arthur this morning. Hi, Melinda. Same to you, Jake. And Niney, good morning to you as well. And again, we welcome everybody. If you're not familiar, this is not something we do sporadically. We do our at-home updates on a daily basis. Most of the time, though, we're not focusing on storms. We're just talking about what's happening in the headlines, what's happening locally, things that you're interested in. We also, observations about other stories. And I always try to end on something light, and I'm going to do the same thing today. I think we pretty much covered most of the weather, and the idea that the thing that you need to do is keep paying attention to what's going on, no matter where you're at. And you have a lot of ways to be able to do that. But is to also end on something light. And I have a couple of things I wanted to show you this morning. I love this story. I read this story, and I thought it was a very cool story. It's Houston Chronicle this morning. It says, astronaut chooses his daughter's wedding over going to space. Yeah, here's a guy who spent years, Chris Ferguson. He works for Boeing now and was going to be the commander of Boeing's first astronaut-led flight. But he said, you know what? There are some things that are just bigger than space. And one of them is being at my daughter's wedding. You can imagine the amount of time he's probably spent away from his family doing astronaut training. But you can go and watch. It's just kind of a cool story. That again, there are things above and beyond that are greater issues. Some of us, I think, lose track of that. Whether it's our job or it's our political position or whatever it may be, we lose sight of what really has gravity and weight in our lives. And obviously, gravity, no pun intended, obviously, this man has discovered what many of us have, that there's nothing more important on the face of this planet than your family, your loved ones. All right. And then finally this morning, if you're sitting around today and you can't go out, there's nothing you can do, and you're thinking, man, what am I going to do to fill the time? I always encourage people, read. A book. So many people I know, when you say a book, they just look at you with a blank stare like, what? I watch television. Listen, I do television for a living. I get it. But at the same time, I think every once in a while you need to take a break, from having somebody feed you and feed yourself. And reading is a great way to do that. I've always found reading to be a great escape. If you want to get away from things, you want to go to another space, pick up a book, start reading. If you're one of those people, you're burned out by news, then don't read, factual accounts of things that are going on in the world. Go read some fiction. Escape into the world of fiction. There's nothing wrong with that, as far as a good escape. And I say this because this is one of my favorite books that I've written in a couple of years, and it's coming to the big screen now, and it's called News of the World. And I think this came out, News of the World probably was published, I want to say, 2016. This is the story of a Army veteran in the 1800s who goes out and finds a girl who's been kidnapped by the Indians. No new story there. But what makes this interesting is that the central character in this book goes from town to town reading newspapers. That's what he does. That's why it's called News of the World. Because think about it, back then, there were a lot of people who could not read, had no idea. So he was kind of like the first newscaster, But he would go into towns and he would set up and say bars, saloons, and for a nickel, whatever, people could come in, and he literally read the newspaper to them. And people were just engrossed. Can you imagine hearing about things happening on the other side of the world when you barely know what's happening in your own town? But that's what he did. It was a book I really enjoyed. It's not very long. Paulette Giles is a Texas writer. She lives in Utopia. This is from Texas Monthly. It's a good read about the movie coming out. Tom Hanks is going to star in the movie. He plays the central character. But Emily McQuellar also tells a very interesting story and a profile about the novelist, the person who wrote the book, and her being a Texan. And it's just an interesting read. But again, if you're looking for a good book, if you haven't read it yet, let me recommend to you News of the World by Paulette Giles. I think it'll keep you engaged. And that's what everybody wants when they read a book, right? When you start reading it, you want to be into it. You want it to take you someplace else. You want to learn something. And this book delivers on a lot of different levels. So you might, and I always encourage people, read it before it becomes a movie. I don't care how good the movie maker is. There's no way on God's green earth that even the best movie maker can take a book that's 200, 400 pages long and in an hour and a half or even 2 hours deliver the essence. You're going to miss something, right? It's just not going to be the same. So again, read the book, then see the movie if you're so moved. Not the other way around is always probably a better bet. Although sometimes movies pique your interest in books, so that can happen too. All right, so that's pretty much it for us. Again, the reminder that when you want to stay up on what's going on today, you have a lot of outlets that are going to offer the latest information. You can go to Facebook, of course, where you're already at now watching this, and stay with KFDM News. They'll be updating daily. Watch for Greg and Chad to be doing Facebook Lives. Dana will be doing Facebook Lives, or live streaming, if you will, and they'll be updating the latest information. Timeline, and I really didn't talk about this morning, but if you're actually talking about landfall, timeline is probably from 4 to 8 tonight as to the actual landfall. So you can pick all that up, and it can back at noon today on KFDM, and then 5:36, 9, and 10. So even if you don't want to go to social media, or if you're not going to be, on Facebook or whatever, you can certainly pick it up both on air and Again, online. That pretty much does it for me. I'll be back. If there's something that, I need to share with you or you need to know that I'm going to be back here because you are my community. I am your community, and I'm going to do the best I can to get you the information you need to make wise decisions, to do the things, and certainly you don't need to pack things up. You don't need to be full of anxiety today. We just need to be diligent, and we just need to be watching, and hopefully it's not an issue for people in Southeast Texas. It's not going to be escapable, I don't think, for people in Louisiana. That just doesn't look like that's going to happen. It doesn't mean we're not going to have anything or no fallout or no effects of this. No, it doesn't. What it is remains to be seen. The last storm, of course, went into Louisiana, but we still spent a lot of time, some of us, without power. Will that happen again this time? Wouldn't expect it to. Don't know that it is. It's not the same storm. But again, you never know. That's the only thing, the only lesson that I can take away from 2020 is expect the unexpected, and just never assume anything at this point. All right. Again, thank you for your time this morning. I mean it. I realize that time is the greatest currency of all that you can share with me and I can share with you. And I appreciate your doing it. Check on somebody today. Somebody who's nervous. Somebody who maybe is a senior by themselves at home and they're scared because they really don't know what's going on and all they can hear is the word hurricane. Maybe it would be very reassuring if you just made a phone call to them or you walked across the street and you asked them, how are you doing today? Or, you want to come sit this out with me? You want to come to my house? We'll watch this storm together. It could go a long way to making somebody a lot more comfortable and making, them feel like, I don't know, they're not alone, I guess is my bottom line point. All right, again, thank you for your time. Be safe. Stay tuned. Watch the rain, enjoy it if you can, and stay on top of things. And we'll talk again soon. Have yourself a terrific weekend.